Welcome to another edition of Resilient Living Podcast, a show dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving you from surviving to thriving and living life on your own terms. And getting a little frog in your throat just to start the show. Look at me. Hey, I'm Adrian Babashoff. This is episode 25, and this is vegetable food production. And I just kind of wanted to go over today on some considerations on, what should we do? What kind of food should we actually grow? We all know that we probably should be growing some food, and especially in these hard times, and to save some money, to help our health and everything. But what exactly do we do? How do we get something like this off the ground? How do we plan this all out? And I just kind of wanted to cover that all in our 15-minute segment that we have this morning. And excuse the background noise. That's my F-350 pickup truck. I'm actually on my work commute to my spin farm operations, where I grow a lot of my own food. So let's get into it. Anything is better than nothing, as the first note that I have. And this is basically for a lot of people starting out here. You think that maybe you do some sprouts or something like that, or just a tomato here and there. But you know what, guys? It's just you're doing a little tiny bit here and there, and maybe it's not worth it. It's worth it. It's getting you the experience. We talk about a lot on the show of the monetary system, about a return on investments. There's nothing bigger than return on investment that if you just grew one tomato plant and you grew it on your patio, your porch, your tiny backyard, and you kept saving the seeds every year, what's going to happen is those seeds they're going to acclimate to your biome, to your area. And when you plant that tomato bush, that plant, it could be just a seed that cost you, a penny. And now you've got about 200 to 400 seeds every time you harvest, if you save one of those things. So you're stacking up like a bank account. It's like printing money. So anything is better than nothing. And I'd advise, we'll get into that. I'm jumping the gun. I'm too excited. I love talking about growing your own food. Anything is better than nothing. We got all kinds of little tips for you guys here today too. So buy and sample first. Now I want to talk to you people who are thinking like, I want to do this for survival. I want to go big scale, kind of like what I'm doing. What I'm finding is that I'm actually not utilizing everything I have. I'm throwing some stuff away when I could be composting, which we're going to talk about too. But yeah, I have a lot of stuff that I figured, I'll just live off everything that's growing on my farm. And come to find out, there's only so many turnips and heads of lettuce and stuff like that you can eat before you start to actually get, I think it's a mixture of boredom. You get bored of the same thing. Also, tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, things like that, they don't really fill you up. So, and we're going to talk about that, calorie-dense food. So, if you think that you want to, survive off stuff, you should definitely consider buying a bunch of stuff first. You want to consider buying, like if you think that you want to live off things like potatoes, buy a sack of potatoes and just eat it day in, day out, and see how you feel. So do an experiment first is basically what I'm saying. Go buy a bunch of stuff that you think you want to grow and see how well the flavor is, and not just for you, your entire family as well. See if you guys will live off those things. Take a diary, take note, and find out the things that you really do like, and then go from there. And that gives you something that you guys would, if you're going to go large scale, you can go, oh, okay, these are the species that I actually want to tackle, and I want to do more than others. So, and speaking of boredom, my next note here is learn to cook. So, for instance, I never knew that I liked turnips. And if you take turnips, they're like a radishy, kind of potato-y, it's a root crop. And what happens is if you eat these things raw or different forms, it's actually not quite that good. It's not that much that pleasing. But if you go and you roast turnips and you put a little bit of like olive oil and some seasonings on them, they're really good. And by the way, they're keto and paleo friendly, meaning they don't have a lot of starch like potatoes do. If you're looking to lose weight or something like that, it doesn't have it won't produce so much sugars in your body. So it's a lot healthier than just living off potatoes. But yeah, another one is Swiss chard. I hate Swiss chard, but I actually picked the entire stem with the long part of a Swiss chard, and I make what's called a green soup. And I don't like kale either, but I'll take all my greens, I'll put in the cube of bouillon. There, I said it. It's like chicken or beef flavor. And then I'll salt, pepper it to taste, put a little bit of lemon in it, a little dash of olive oil, and I'll put the greens in there, and the stem included. I recommend that you chop them up, though, probably like bite-sized pieces, but they get really tender, and it loses that earthy, weird dirt flavor the only way I can explain the Swiss chard. But it's very healthy for you. So moving on, things you think you don't like, I guess we just covered that. If you learn to cook, like I said, with turnips and stuff like that, you'll actually find that like turnips end up being one of my favorite foods ever. So learn how to cook. Don't just try things one time. Try them in different ways. I'll give you guys one more tip. You guys know about ceviche. If you don't, it's where you cook fish or shrimp with lemon juice. The lemon juice actually cooks it. You don't even put a flame to the meat. You add avocado and whatever, like kind of like pico de gallo and stuff like that inside of it, and it literally cooks the meats. You can do this with kale as well. You can put kale leaves and lemon juice and like olive oil with some seasonings, and it'll literally tenderize it and it'll infuse it with flavor. So moving on, next is calories. So when we look at calories, if we're looking from a survival standpoint, or for somebody even, you know, on a balcony or something like that, there's certain foods that have more calories than caloric values than others. Some of them off the top of my head, and also minerals, I'd like to say. We just talked about Swiss chard. Swiss chard is right below kale. Kale is a big old fat. Like I said, I don't like kale, but the vitamins and minerals, I think there's something like 60-something vitamins and minerals, including protein, inside of kale. Also in Swiss chard. Swiss chard is very robust plant too. Doesn't really get hurt too much, depending on the species and everything, by bugs and things like that. It grows really prolifically and it's very easy to grow. So I would definitely recommend, if you can learn how to cook, Swiss chard is probably one of the best go-tos. So calories, let's move on next to storage. So if you're going to grow a bunch of food and you're going to do this in a small space, or even in your, if you have a pantry, in an apartment or something, or you're going to do this for full-blown survival, you got to think about storage. We got a lot of things on how to, I guess I'm going to jump across the notes here to preserving, whether you're going to do pickling, you're going to pickle your harvest, you're going to dehydrate your harvest. You need to make sure that you have a place for storage to put these things. If you're just going to eat and go, like straight from farm to fork, like I do, you know, garden to your kitchen, you want to make sure that you have enough room in your refrigerator to handle these things. Another tip I would definitely recommend too for leafy greens is a salad spinner. There's two ways we can do this here. You can either pick your vegetables like kale and arugula and stuff like that, and you're going to want to take it straight home without washing it. Once you get water on it, that may contribute to it starting to mold and rot. You want to kind of keep them relatively dry and cool. So if you're not going to do that and you want to process a bunch of stuff, you need to wash all your stuff immediately, put them in a salad spinner to get most of that moisture off, and then put them in the fridge. What I like to do is put a paper towel like around them. If you guys don't have a salad spinner, they're only like $30, $40. You can get yourself like a sack, like a plastic sack they use for potatoes with the holes in it. Just grab it and start using like a whip, like spinning it around a circle to get all the excess moisture out. All right, next is the importance of automation. Now I'm heading to my farm right now, guys, and I have an invention called the biodegradable container gardening system, and everything's on drip irrigation. My system's a little more high-tech than a regular garden, but I definitely recommend for the busy folks to get automation, because if you ever get sick or you end up getting busy like me, going to work, and you know it's a hot day, all you have to do is spin a dial to adjust the irrigation system. And like for me, all I have to do is walk my garden, and I've got like 350 different species of varieties of plants growing, guys. All I have to do is walk my aisles and check to, like, turn on the water and check to make sure everything's dripping. My garden is also suspended. If your garden is on the ground, you can literally just walk through and keep lifting all your pots, and if you find one that's light, that means that you've got an irrigation blockage, and you just need to replace that part. So yeah, automation is definitely key, especially for us busy folk. Costs and inputs is the next thing I want to talk about. You know, if you're going to start going a little larger scale, if you're going small, I don't think it's that bad, but I still think that you guys should consider doing such things as like bokashi composting. I don't have time to get in details, but it doesn't stink. You do it in a 5-gallon bucket. It's very convenient. This is something you could do in an apartment building, a home, or anything like that. But all of your excess that you have, like we talked about, maybe stuff that you're not eating, you should definitely create yourself a compost pile. Now, compost is a subject matter in and of itself. I prefer worm castings as my go-to for various different reasons. But yeah, compost is a very good thing to keep down costs and inputs. You know, you've got soil mixtures if you're doing container gardening, which you have to purchase every single time you plant, or you can amend them. You can dump, like say you had a 5-gallon bucket, you can dump half of it into another 5-gallon bucket and then mix it with some new soil and add some work castings and things like that. That's why I did invent the biodegradable container gardening system, because my soil will last up to 10 years, maybe plus. I never really have to replace it. In fact, it gets better with age. So there's a lot of inputs, seeds, if you're getting sprays and stuff like that, like essential oils or soaps and things that you're going to, or if you're going to get spinosad or neem oil and things like that. So you want to consider a lot of the inputs, especially when you go as large as I am, and try to get some sort of ROI on this thing. You got to do the math and try to figure out, equipment-wise, spray bottles and spray pumps and things like that to do mass spraying. So things that definitely look into cost of water. I live in Sunnyside, California, so it's cost me a lot of, for mine it doesn't really cost me a lot, but I know people who garden, it costs them, a good hefty amount, probably like $50 to $100 a month, right? Mine's down to a fraction, maybe like $3. So I should really probably do a show on the biodegradable container gardening. Okay, so we talked about inputs and everything like that. Time is another one. That's why I automate things. My garden, again, is suspended off the ground. They're basically hanging in baskets, so I don't really need to worry about mice and ants and slugs and snails and pincher bugs and all those kind of things. I do need to worry about aphids, like flying insects and stuff like that. But time automation is really going to help you guys out. You got to really think, too, if you're going to go larger scale, start small. That's why I say anything is better than nothing, because you can kind of see how much time out of your day it takes. And then that once you're ready to go a little larger scale, you keep adding. Now you're not just bombarded with like weeding and all these kind of things that you need to do. Space is my next one on here. And that's why if you don't have space, guys, we're going to do a whole show. I'm going to do a whole thing on spin farming. I just decided right now, just because it's my show and I get to do what I want. Space, guys, I farm on somebody else's property. That's what spin farming is. I don't even own the land. That's where I'm driving to right now. And guys, go out there, and there's public places that you can go to. Like the city sometimes has little garden plots you can rent for like $10 a month or something. Whatever space you got, there's container gardening and things like that you can do in any space. Even if you have a 8 by 4 foot balcony, you could still grow something. So practice run for survival. I think I covered that's on my notes there is, buying that food, really figuring out, even if you're going to go small scale, like why grow stuff and go through all this time, money, and inputs and everything we're talking about if you're not really going to eat it and you don't like it? Go buy yourself a bunch of stuff first and figure out what it is and just kind of go from there. I think on the going from what my note is here on a survival practice run is once you start going large scale, you're going to find that there's not much predictability. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. So if you're depending on these type of things, it's really good to do the practices so that when you are ready to go get serious about it for full-blown survival, that you kind of get a handle on what you're doing. What you're going to learn is that you should do double of whatever you think that you are if you're going for survival, if not maybe triple. Some years are weird. Cabbage moths will show up in tiny numbers one year, but then there'll be infestations the next year. Aphids, same thing. There's all kinds of different bugs that will show up. It's like their year, like the Chinese calendar. It's a year of the pig. It's like this year of 2021 has been the year of the aphid. I'll tell you that. They wiped out, I'll give you guys some insight on my farm. They wiped out about probably, I'd say a good 50% of my crops from spring. 50% of them gone. I didn't even get to eat a head of cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, anything else. And also we had some bursts of sun where it was like May, I think, April, and it was like, it got up to like 95 degrees and it made all my stuff bolt. So yeah, definitely want to do a survival practice run. As I said, something is better than nothing. This is what gets your foot in the door, gets you experience. So I have in here landrace breeding. My friend Joseph Lofthouse on Facebook, you guys should check him out. He just wrote a book on land racing, and basically it's a podcast in and of itself. I want to get him on the show. Tell him Adrian Babashoff from Resilientlpodcast sent you and that you want to hear him on my show. And but he just wrote a book, guys. Go out there and buy it. It's all about breeding plants for your area. And really awesome dude. This is really big stuff. This is stuff that money can't buy as far as the information he's giving you. From a survival standpoint, from also producing your own food. This guy's breeding plants, and it's not complicated at all, guys. You could just crossbreed stuff to get better flavor and disease resistance, pest resistance. I mean, he even breeds stuff that skunks don't want to eat, like a cucumber, right? He'll breed a cucumber that for some reason skunks or raccoons won't eat, and he keeps that one. So if you're ready to go like deep into this stuff and start creating your own breeds, definitely check out Joseph Loft House, Loft House. All right, guys. That's pretty much the show. I have worm castings on here, DIY, but that's a show in and of itself as well. I'd love to pick these things apart and do larger shows, but I need you guys' support. If I've given you guys any value, please like, subscribe, review my show is one of the biggest things I guess that's happening right now. If you guys can give me a review, then more people are going to start to listen. The show will build, and maybe we can do like an hour and a half long shows and really get deep into some information instead of these little 15-minute segments. So guys, that's the show. If you like it, check it out on Instagram. It's Resilient Living Podcast. Also, the links in the descriptions below. There's Resilient L Podcast. You guys can message me and let me know what you guys are thinking. To talk to me directly. There's all kinds of good stuff. So as I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near-life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire and human up, my friends.